Wellness is a practice, not just a word.
Welcome to the Synergee podcast, where myself, Kelly Engelmann, and Lori Esarey shed light on powerful tools and topics that nourish your body.
And most importantly, feed your soul.
Hi, I'm Kelly Engelmann. I am the founder of Enhanced Wellness Living in Jackson, Mississippi, and the co-founder of Synergee. But better than that, I get to be the best friend of Lori Esarey.
Yeah, so that is me. Yeah, I'm the owner of Total Nutrition and Therapeutics and the co-founder of Synergee. And we're here today to probably talk about one of, I would say a little uncomfortable, but we're going to be uncomfortable together today, really talking about our stories, who we are individually, who we are in our communities, and who we are together. And so we're going to do that today. Get uncomfortable with you, our listeners, just sharing with you where we come from and how our stories have impacted our clinics, our practices, and our life today.
Yeah, so how it makes us available really to have, all these years of wisdom that we got from the School of Hard Knocks and from the formal education that we acquired, and how that helps us bring to you, the perspectives that we have on life and wellness and family and fun. And so I hope that this is enlightening and fun for both of us.
Absolutely.
I don't dread telling my story. All of my story is not beautiful, but God's made it beautiful. And so I feel blessed to be here.
So in an authentic and a transparent way today, probably with a bunch of laughs, maybe a few tears, we're going to share that with you. So hang on and get excited about the next several minutes together.
Awesome. So Lori Esarey, tell us about yourself. Where did you grow up? What were you like as a child?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So I was born in Baltimore, Maryland. I was born to my parents who together today, they've been married 63 years.
Woohoo,
I know,
and
right?
Papa.
Yeah, it taught me some very valuable lessons, but was born there and then moved to Florida. I now live in Central Florida, but moved to Florida when I was 6 years old. We moved to Florida to actually help my uncle with his retirement center. So he was the owner of a nursing home, residential living ALF facility, really just an aging community in Florida. And so we moved here when I was young, and I grew up with entrepreneurs. My mom and dad were a part of that business. We basically lived all of our breath. We were there. So I started working at a young age, and I got a chance to work with the aging adult. And so that we're going to go back to in a few minutes, but that has really impacted my life in a very, very big way to see what health looked like in the aging adult and what unhealthy looked like.
Wow. So that made an impression on you really early in your life.
It did.
That gave you perspective that really most people don't get to have.
And
right?
at the time, I have to say, I didn't necessarily like that we lived basically at a retirement center, because there was a part of my early years in middle school and early high school that we lived on property.
Wow.
We did. So yes, it did frame my view of health and the aging adult. And so yes, a unique opportunity, but that's where I also fell in love with and wanted to become a nurse.
Sweet.
Right. So I decided to go to nursing school. It was one of those things where there wasn't an alternative. In other words, I didn't come out of school thinking I would be this or that. I was going to be a nurse. However, I really thought that I was going to go in the direction of psychology and working with behavior, because it intrigued me to see how people behaved.
Interesting. So that's what you're doing today, right? You're a nurse and a nurse practitioner, but at the end of the day, you have to say that you dig into behavioral health and behavior changes quite a lot in your practice that you have today. So that's pretty interesting that that's really was your heart from the very beginning.
And a funny story to that is I headed into school, dual enrolled in high school, graduated early because I did start school quite early and skipped a grade, and was dual enrolled in high school and in college. One of my first two classes were sociology and psychology. that psychology class, I learned how I didn't want to go the route of psychology because I'm an empath and I take on other people's emotions. And so I bailed on that. But you know what? Here I am today, as you just said.
Yeah.
I am working in the field, if you will, of psychology or behavior 24/7, basically.
Absolutely.
So irony is, right?
Right.
Irony is. So that's where I started. And I went to nursing school. I went to 2 years of community college and then off to University of South Florida. And at University of South Florida, I got the opportunity for, much like yourself, interesting how our paths in some respects had similarities, but offered to do the Valor Program scholarship, in which very few people in the nation are chosen. And in the same year, both you and I were offered that didn't even know each other
states.
at the time.
We had no idea we didn't know each other existed, and we were both Valor awardees, and we got to really participate in a phenomenal mentorship program with the VA medical system between the junior year and senior year of nursing school. So that was one of the things that we talked about very early in meeting each other, of that commonality.
Yes. And so that experience really helped me to see ICU, intensive care, cardiovascular, and I got really intrigued with that type of emergency and just thinking on my feet type of medicine. And so from there, I did graduate at University of South Florida with my bachelor's degree, and me, the forever student, decided to turn right back around and go to school for my advanced practice, my nurse practitioner. And I didn't quite know what I wanted to do. I was young at the time. I was, basically only 21 at graduating high school right around then. I'm aging myself now, but
you mean graduating college?
Or graduating college. Thank you for reminding me of that. So at 21, graduating college, and didn't really know what I wanted to do, but knew that I loved school, loved education. I loved being at the bedside of patients already because I had had some really great experiences, but I knew I wasn't done. I knew I wasn't done. So I returned. I applied for the master's program there at University of South Florida, was initially turned down because I was too young and didn't have enough clinical experience. And so back
in the day, they required 2 years of clinical experience before they would allow you into a master's program for nurse practitioners. So, you tried to get in, you knocked on that door a little early.
I did. And so found a loophole that if you took a couple classes and aced them, that you had the ability to apply. And at that point, they would typically accept you. And so that's what I did. I went back to school to be a family nurse practitioner. And I'll never forget my first day of class, going around the room and them asking us, what did we want to do with our nurse practitioner license upon graduation? And I have to be honest, I just said, I don't know. I was in that room with people much older than myself, right? And so I'm the youngest in that group, and what do you want to do? And all I knew is that I wanted to just do more. That's all I knew. And so I was told to do the family because that was the most broad and it wasn't narrowed down, it wasn't niched it down, and that I could do that. So I returned to school to do that. And through that time period of my nurse practitioner, I not only got pregnant with my oldest daughter, I also was diagnosed with diabetes at the same time.
Wow.
And I was a marathon runner. And that period of time in my life was truly, I believe, the catalyst for where I sit now. Because I had already been a nurse, I had already understood how traditional medicine operated, and I was not feeling well, and I wasn't getting answers. You're stressed, you have a new baby, it's all of those things, and really what it was hormone imbalances, and not just sex hormones, but glucose and insulin.
Right.
So it opened my eyes at that time to, first of all, people who feel bad, who are not getting answers.
So people who feel bad may look good. Mm-hmm. And as a result of that, they may be told, it's just life. You're just stressed. Go chill out. Mm-hmm. You're going to be fine.
Yeah. It's all of those things that have happened in your life. That's what it is.
Yes.
When I knew it was something more, yes, I was sad, no doubt. but I wasn't depressed, and basically was being diagnosed with depression, when in fact, in hindsight, what it was my insulin levels were elevated, and insulin just causes a person to feel like you're carrying a 10-pound ball and chain with you everywhere you go. And I did want to lay on the couch, and I was a marathon runner, and I would get up and go. Mind over matter, I did it.
You pushed yourself.
I did, absolutely. But at the end of the day, didn't feel good. And so that really drove me to look deeper, to dig into. And once I graduated with my nurse practitioner degree, I was working in family medicine, and I was seeing people just like me.
And did you feel like you had enough tools in your toolbox to adequately treat those patients?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
And that was a huge disparity between what I wanted to do and what I was capable of doing. I was trained to write prescriptions. I was trained to definitely listen. I mean, nurses listen. So I feel like I had more. I had one up on some of my colleagues in the medical field, and I was a good listener. But I didn't know what really was the ticket to really help people feel better, and not just get better temporarily, but to truly be better.
So what did you do? How did you approach helping yourself resolve the issues that you were struggling with blood sugar and with mood and with lack of energy? Like, what was your go-to during that time? I know running was a go-to, right? That was supposed to solve all of your problems, right?
Well, as mutual runners, as people, the two of us that really did turn to running, right?
So we say most runners are actually running from something.
Yes, we often say that, right? We are, right?
That is a clue right there.
And if someone says that's not true, it is true. Yeah. So we were always running. I was always running from something. So running, yes, it was my vice. It was my go. It was my give. It was my get out and do. But the reality was that I, as the forever student, turned to a lot of reading, a lot of books, and a lot of trying to figure it out. And in my reading got really, really confused, I'll be honest, because it was the difference between what we knew about nutrition, real nutrition, which in my opinion, we didn't know much about. I didn't know anything about, and what I'd been taught. Calories in, calories out.
Absolutely.
Right?
I read every single runner's world that ever hit the shelf.
Yes.
Up until 2004, probably.
Yeah.
And it was all about calories in and calories out. And no real talk about micronutrients or nutrient depletion and that role that it has in development of metabolic disturbances such as blood sugar control.
Yeah. So as I would dig in to that information, I tried everything. I wasn't necessarily obese, but I was overweight. And so from Weight Watchers to Nutrisystem to just trying to figure it all out, like what's going to make me feel better, because what I was being told was just reduce your calories, run more, you're going to feel better. This is just because you're overweight or you're depressed and that wasn't the case. So it really brought me to this huge epiphany, and I'm not exactly sure when it happened, but it was, I'm not going to get these answers in a traditional way. I've got to keep digging, and I got to try it. I got to try new things. And so I just really started digging into, what does quality food look like? What does nutrition look like? Like, what does that really look like? And began to take a different approach, even with me, no more calories, but really looking at the quality of my food and beginning to make that change. But it was a very, very slow process, very slow, because you just don't know what you don't know. I had grown up in an Italian home. We didn't have 1-2 course meals. We had meals. We didn't have...
Go, mom.
Right. So we didn't have 1 course, 2 course meals. We had huge meals. We didn't have meals that were 10 or 15 minutes, in our now traditional or whatever families that were eating on the run. We sat down for meals, and the entire time we were sitting, we had large meals. We always had dessert, and we always had wine with our meals. And so I teasingly say I didn't just come from a big family. I came from a big family, right? And so food was an emotional thing. Food was, you eat when you're happy, you eat when you're sad, you eat when there's a party, you eat when there's, a death in the family. Like you eat, that's what you do. And so there was the Clean Plate Club. I grew up, you didn't not finish your plate. And if you didn't, it was saved in the refrigerator for you the next day. So I had a lot of thoughts, ideology, call it what you want, the way that I looked at food and the way that
messages around food and what the purpose of food was. Food was for entertainment. It was for emotional support, for bonding, Wow.
So this quest really was not just about learning more about food, but it was learning why do I turn to those things. So long story short, I changed my life, and I'm currently, constantly, aren't we, changing, hit a lot of roadblocks and along the way. But as I began practicing medicine and family practice, I realized over time that although I had tools in my toolbox, as you say, to write prescriptions and to help people identify in some respect when they had a disease state, I didn't have tools in my toolbox to recognize when they were in a state of dysfunction, right? The early stages before disease, right? 10 to 15 years before.
Yeah.
And I didn't have tools in my toolbox that really, in a powerful way, could help people outside of, and prescriptions weren't the answer for me. So I practiced in traditional medicine for many years, and in 2006 started my current practice, Total Nutrition and Therapeutics, in the Villages, Florida, Central Florida. The retirement community of the world, basically one of the largest retirement communities in the world. And I took a big chance, and it was against all odds, as they say, not to use the previous movie out there, but against all odds. But it was against a lot of odds. In 2006, you look back to that period of time, not only in my life, but just in that period of time. I worked with a lot of very powerful physicians, and they were using things like diet medications and fat blockers to help people lose weight. And in their mind, if they would lose weight, they would be healthy. And what I was discovering is that you can lose weight all day long. I had lost hundreds of pounds up and down, up and down, up and down for years. But at the end of the day, I wasn't more healthy as a result of it. And in fact, I felt worse. And so if I was really going to help a person, it was going to be helping them understand that it's about body composition and not body weight. And so I really decided to take a giant leap of faith in 2006 and start my practice. And my practice focuses on truly helping people obtain optimal health and well-being, taking a food-first approach and meeting them where they're at. My youngest patient has been 4 months old. My oldest is 90 years old. You can imagine that the way in which I relate to them and my team relates to them is very differently, but the crux and the mission is the same, is ultimately we all desire to live well. We want to have a greater health span and not lifespan. We want to live well. And whether we're currently retired or we're in our early years, we want to have a vibrant life. And so I get the joy to do that now, and taking what happened to me and my diagnosis and turn my mess into something beautiful, and turn my passion into something that really instills in people how to achieve what I did. And again, I'm learning alongside of them, just as you are.
Absolutely.
But I'm super excited to have that opportunity.
Well, awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have to talk about you, because
now it's my turn.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I grew up in South Mississippi. My mom and dad divorced when I was 7, and I was blessed to have a beautiful grandmother that I adored, and she adored me, and we had many, many good times together. She was my anchor during the time of chaos of that. My dad remarried quickly, and I inherited a brother and a sister through marriage as my step-siblings. And then ultimately, my stepmom and stepdad adopted an additional child. So there were 5 of us growing up in the home. And it was a little crazy. I feel blessed to be alive today of all the shenanigans that actually went down in the house. But here I am, and I'm tough because of it. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
That's right.
So I will stand by that. When I finished high school, I really had zero direction in what I could achieve in my life. I had no vision for what that was going to look like. I was blessed in high school to go to work for Swenson's Ice Cream in the mall, and it was owned by an OBGYN and his wife. And I worked there, waited tables, and I could make $100 on Saturday. Like, tips were phenomenal at an ice cream place. Go figure. So I was banking all this money. I had no idea, what my college future looked like financially. And so I was saving religiously. And the OBGYN asked me to come work in his practice. And I was really, really torn. I was honored because, that seemed like such a grown-up job. But I knew those tips were not going to happen in the OBGYN clinic.
They were not.
So I went to work in the clinic during the week, and then I would still cover some weekends in the ice cream shop so I could still bank some cash. But in that time at the clinic, they took me under their wing. He took me to the OR, so I got to see surgery and C-sections. And one of his assistants was actually a surgical tech. And she encouraged me after high school to go to a surgical tech program. They're only 12 months long. And after 12 months, I could work in the career of medicine and actually make a pretty decent salary. And so when I graduated high school, that's what I did. I moved up to Jackson, Mississippi, and went to Hines Community College at the time, or Hines Junior College at the time. It's now community college. It's all fancy now, but at the time it was junior college. And I completed a year at Hines and went to work for a orthopedic practice, in orthopedic surgery, private practice. So I went to surgery and did total hips and total knees and was all up in the laminar flow room and thought I was big and bad, and realized that although I was making a living, I was able to support myself financially with the help of a roommate. I was not going to have the life that I really wanted. I wanted more. And so I started going back to school at night, taking night classes to do my prerequisitions for nursing. And I realized after about 2 semesters that was going to take me 29 years to finish if I went at night and took classes.
A long time.
So I had to bite the bullet and go back to school full time. And I did my undergraduate at the University Medical Center here in Jackson, Mississippi. And I graduated top of my class. I got the Valor program that Lori was talking about. And that afforded me the opportunity to go into areas of work. I had only been in the OR, and I knew the OR really well, but I got to go into ICU. I got to go into dialysis. I got to go into recovery room and be mentored by these nurses that were truly phenomenal nurses and mentors, and kind of opened my eyes to what the future of nursing could look like for me. And so when I finished nursing school, I had done a scholarship program with the state of Mississippi where I had to work for the state of Mississippi at the state mental hospital for 4 years to pay back the scholarship that I got to help me through nursing school. And so 2 years into that payback, I got a letter from University of Southern Mississippi inviting me to take part in their nurse practitioner program. They had already admitted me to the program upon my acceptance of the letter.
That's pretty phenomenal.
And so I always thought I would go back and do nurse anesthetist because it made sense. I was in the OR. I could relate to the OR. It was more comfortable for me. So when I got the letter, I was like, I don't really know. I don't even know what a nurse practitioner is, right?
Yes.
What is that? I've never seen one. I've never talked to one. I'm not really sure. And in fact, when friends would ask me, what are you going to do when you finish school? I'm like, I have no idea.
So similar stories again, right?
Yeah, at the time, nurse practitioners were not the thing.
No.
And so in fact, when I graduated from the University of Southern Mississippi, I was the first nurse practitioner in the state that was in private practice. There were a lot of nurse practitioners. I shouldn't say a lot. There were several nurse practitioners in rural health clinics, federally funded clinics, and things like that. But yet, at that time, there were none in true private practice. And so I was one of the first in a specialty. There were some in family practice, but I was actually in an OBGYN practice, which was my cup of tea. I absolutely adored it. I worked with a physician who was just phenomenal. He was an excellent surgeon. He had excellent bedside manner. He was a great teacher and really mentored me in those early days of not really knowing what my role should be, what I could do. He really took me by the hand. I was able to stay in the OR, so I went back and got an RNFA degree, right, which helped me be able to be a first assist in surgery and actually get reimbursed for that through insurance payers. So I went with him to all of his cases, did C-sections, hysterectomies, all the fun stuff, and I just loved it. But I worked in that practice for 8 years, and although I loved it, I loved seeing those babies be born. I loved being part of the family circle. I felt like I was part of many, many families. What I was seeing in my patients is that by the time they hit 50, the wheels were starting to fall off. The check engine light was coming on. Despite me telling them to eat less and exercise more, I was a runner. I could speak the running language. I could speak calories in and calories out. The tools in my toolbox were antidepressants, birth control pills, and a little Premarin and Prempro. If that didn't fix all their ills, I really didn't know what else to do. But I was seeing hypertension develop. I was seeing thyroid disease develop. I was seeing osteoporosis develop.
And I'm sure hair loss and wrinkles and just decline in overall
energy. And these were beautiful people. And they were living reasonable lives, to my knowledge. And I just felt like, something's missing here. What else could we be doing to help them feel and function better? And I had a friend who was an OBGYN that presented me with this concept of fruits and vegetables in a capsule. Now, I have to be honest. I love my brownies and I love my ice cream. I do not love my broccoli. And at this time, it was calories in and calories out. So there were times when I had ice cream for dinner all week. And I would just get up and run 6 miles the next morning and felt really, really, really good about it until I was in Washington, D.C., minding my business, and I stepped off a curve and developed a stress fracture. Mm-hmm. A stress fracture. I'm 20-something years old, and I look hot, and I am a runner, and I am invincible, and I have a stress fracture? Are you kidding me right now? Now, the backstory is I was training for marathons, and I had done 4 in a row. 4 marathons in 16 weeks.
Which is insane.
I was eating ice cream for dinner. Hello. That math just doesn't add up.
Right.
So I created a major metabolic disturbance and my bones were struggling. And as a result, they broke down. But I was told it was a stress fracture and it was just stress. No one ever bothered to tell me that it was nutritionally based. So my friend, my colleague, OBGYN, introduces me to fruits and vegetables in a capsule. And I thought, way to go, Jetson food. I can just take these capsules and eat my brownies and ice cream, and life is going to be good, right?
Right.
But what happened was, because I am such a nerd, and I am a reader, and I'm, all of that, I decided to start attending some of the educational conferences around nutrition. And every quarter, or twice a year rather, they would have these conferences where they would bring in all the top latest researchers on nutrition and present the hard data on nutrition. As I started to learn and study, I just became convicted that, oh my gosh, what have I done to myself? At this point, I'm just turning 30, and I'm starting to see some extra weight. All those drug reps bringing cookies in the afternoon to the clinic, and I, of course, had that with my Coke in the afternoons.
But don't worry about it. You're going home to run.
Of course, I'm going to run again, so it's fine. But I had created a metabolic storm for myself, and once I realized that that's actually what I was doing, I had no choice but to start changing. And then my appetite for learning and understanding just became more. At the time, the internet wasn't a thing. Mm-mm. There wasn't information on the internet to go search these things. I was subject to waiting for the next conference to roll around to dig in a little bit more, or maybe going to the library or getting a book. But it was very fragmented knowledge. It wasn't complete.
And I love what you said about the appetite and the curiosity, because that really was in a time period in which that wasn't easily accessible. You had to look. Deep to really find truth in the area of nutrition.
Yeah. So life circumstances brought me back to Jackson, Mississippi in 2004. And I looked around. I had been recruited to work in a pain management clinic, which was not my jam, but my quest was to help them develop an osteoporosis program for their patients on steroids. So osteoporosis prevention was supposed to be my area of expertise. And that never really came to fruition in that pain management setting. And I became just more aware that I was in an area where that wasn't really feeding my soul. And there was no other practice that I had a desire to join. There were lots of OBGYN practices that I adored, but no one was talking about nutrition. No one wanted to talk about nutrition. And so I decided, to step off the cliff and to open my own practice. And my idea was I would treat women. We would focus on hormone replacement therapy and balance and, throw in a little nutrition to help them out. And in doing that, I got to be mentored by an OBGYN in Atlanta, Georgia, Dr. Eldridge Taylor. I'll give him a little bit of a shout out. And he really opened my eyes to education opportunities, what was out there. He had a mentorship program at the time. He allowed us to come together and present cases via a webcast once a week. So I was able to get mentorship through that. And then ultimately, I stumbled on, and this is a funny story with my daughter, but we were and she was a cosmetology student, and we were at an expo, and I was at the expo with her, just talking to vendors, and this vendor was asking me what I did, and I was describing what I did, and he said, "Oh, well, you must know about A4M." And I said, "A4 what?" And he said, "A4M. It's a national organization for functional medicine, and you should know about this." And so I went home and looked it up and realized this was October. They had a conference in December. And so I signed up for the conference. And when I signed up for the conference, I got a call from a representative, Hillary. And she calls me and she says, "Did you know there's a certification exam that you can take for functional medicine?" And I had been studying functional medicine through Dr. Taylor and reading everything I could get my hands on. And I was like, no way, there's a certification for this? Sign me up. So I went in December and sat for boards for the A4M certification in functional medicine, functional and regenerative medicine. I passed my boards. I have no idea how in the world. Now, they did send me reading material in this 3 phone book deep set of research articles that I managed to pour through.
Yeah.
But I managed to pass that certification exam. And I came home and they called me to tell me I'd passed. And they said, "Would you be interested in doing our fellowship?" And I said, "What is a fellowship?" Like, I thought that was only for doctors. And they're like, "No, we have a fellowship in functional medicine." And so I was like, yes, I want to know more. I mean, my appetite is whet. I have a practice that's growing. I really want to have the education to back what I'm doing and what I'm seeing with my practice. I was already seeing results, but I didn't really understand why I was seeing results, right? I didn't have the science behind at the time. And so I went back and got not only my fellowship, but I did a master's in metabolic and nutritional medicine from the University of South Florida. And that is where, my friends, I met Lori.
It is. And prior, I just want to say, going back a little bit, I want to make sure, and you did a shout out to Dr. Taylor, and I'm so glad that you did that, because I think the common theme up to this point for both of us was, number one, seeing how traditional medicine and the tools we had in our toolbox wasn't enough. But number two, the steps and the people that were placed in our lives at the time that we needed them to know what was next.
Yes.
I think about some representatives from companies that would come into the internal medicine practice that I was working at, and just kind of poking at me for a micronutrient study called SpectraCell. And I think about my being at a hotel for a traditional medical conference in Fort Lauderdale, and simultaneously in that same hotel, A4M was going on. And this was about 8 years prior to me hearing about A4M. And I remember going to their outside where they had the books, and I took that back up to my room, and I was reading through their stuff more than I was reading
about
through
the
mine.
program. So at
Yes.
each A4M conference, they have a catalog,
Right.
that outlines all the speakers and the vendors with a lot of descriptive information. So that's what you picked up, was the catalog.
And I was just very intrigued. And so it's just, in hindsight, in the rearview mirror, there are so many people and so many opportunities that afforded us that next step, that gave us that
Absolutely.
appetite and that intrigue. And I am so beyond thankful. And it's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence, as we're going to talk, that we met at A4M in Orlando that year. And it's not a coincidence how we landed there. And that's just a really cool part of both of our stories. So yeah, A4M, it was in Orlando at probably one of the worst time periods of my life. I had been going through something really difficult on the home front, with marriages not going well, marriage not going well. I was this runner. I was in a state of what I now know to have been adrenal fatigue. I was on a search. I had already had my practice, and I was already helping people change their nutrition to help them live a more optimal life. But I was missing something really big.
Yeah. So you had a weight loss practice. That's really how your practice started, was you focused on, and I should say body composition.
Sure.
You know, we were calling it a weight loss practice, but you were actually measuring body composition at the time.
I sure was.
So you were measuring biometrics that most clinics were not measuring when they were dealing with weight loss.
My focus was, if you can reduce or improve your body composition, then you can improve your health, period. That was kind of the period at the end of the story, right? But what I was realizing, that 80% of the people I was treating were getting better and they were reaching those goals, but 20% of them weren't. Yet they were eating better, right? We say what you eat, what you drink, how you sleep, how you move, and how you think.
Yes.
And they were doing all of those things better, right?
But they weren't getting better.
They weren't getting better. So my curious mind took me back to that catalog I had seen years ago, and I was in a conversation basically with one of my reps who said, I have a free ticket. Do you want to go? And a free ticket to me was everything, because I didn't have the cash to pay for these conferences. It was expensive.
Yeah.
You know, going to A4M at the time, I mean, I want to say my ticket just for that one day was close to $500. And, you know, typically it's all about value, right?
Right.
I didn't know that I valued it just yet. So was it worth spending $500 to go? So when I got a free ticket to go to the national conference in Orlando that year, I was super excited, but I was also not only feeling great, I was curious, but I was at a point where I had looked into A4M, and to be honest, I wasn't quite sure what I was getting into. It's so funny how you said, you know, you just called them up and they said, you know, there's this certification, and
I was so naive. Like, I was just like, sign me up.
Sign me up, crazily. Me, personality, it's, oh no, I need all the details. I need to know what this is going to take. And I mean, again, different personalities here, but we got to the same end point, which is beautiful.
Yeah, so I was taking, I don't remember what module I was taking that time that we met. I was 2 or 3 modules in to my fellowship program. There's 10 modules that you take for advanced fellowship and for the master's program. And I was 2 or 3 modules in. I don't recall exactly what module, but
and I was attending the general conference.
And she was in general session, so we weren't in class together. But Pam Smith, can I say, damn that Pam Smith?
You're allowed.
She would keep that conference hall so cold. I think she was having some hormonal changes, and she was keeping it frigid in there. And so I hate to be cold. Anybody that knows me knows I hate to be cold. And so I had found respite outside in the Florida sun, sitting on a bench, and up walks Lori. Asked me, you know, could she sit with me on the bench?
Which there's irony in that too, because I would have never gone out of my comfort zone to ask someone to sit down at their table. There was plenty of standing room outside. But that day, I asked to sit down.
Yeah. We struck up a conversation, and quite honestly, and this is where God works so beautifully, because she was curious about A4M. She was really wanting to pursue more education, and she was telling me her story at home and the chaos that was going on and the challenges that were happening and the physical stress that she was under. And I'm a mom. Like, I just want to protect everybody. And so I looked at her and I said, you know, I just don't think this is the right time for you. This is a lot of work. This is not just coming to class. This is a lot of work. And obviously you have a lot going on. I wish you the best. You know, we exchanged numbers. And a few weeks later,
we're in Vegas. We're in Vegas.
A few weeks later, she calls me up.
Yeah.
Or text me. I don't really remember which, if you called or text.
And I said, remember that class? Do you want to go? You want to go to Vegas? And, you know, as I'm, you know, just thinking about what that would look like. Like, I had a hesitation just to sit down at the dang table with you. And then now it's, do you want to share a room in Vegas? Had never been in Vegas, which was very interesting as well. Didn't realize that there was literally just glass separating the bathroom from the general area of, so lots of funny stories in there. We could probably go into that in more detail, maybe somewhere else.
No. We have to go there now. So I get there first. Thank God I get there first. And I don't know who she is, you know, I'm okay with rooming, but I'm pretty modest and, like, you know, straight-laced and all that. And there is only a king-size bed, and they have no other rooms. You know, I did ask. And so I'm thinking, okay, how do I navigate this? Because the bathroom is solid glass and there's no separation. Like, you're going to see everything. And there's a king size bed. And so I called down to the desk again, and I said, do you have a cot? I mean, help a girl out. There's no sofa in here. There's no sofa bed. Do you have a cot? So they actually brought up a pretty nice cot, So she gets in at midnight. I'm in the cot.
In the corner,
covered up
of this room
to my nose with my covers when she walks in. And she got there, and I was like, listen, I hope you're not a freak. I am not into that. Let's make the best of this weekend. Right. But it just started a really fun, adventurous friendship. And it was really fun to be able to do that fellowship program together and not feel like you're alone or an island.
Right.
And walk through the challenges of getting our coursework completed at record speed.
Yes, and the master's degree and all of that in between, but just simultaneously together. But yes, and orchestrated by God, there's no doubt, because not a chance meeting, but a meeting in which we had similar stories. Although you were in functional medicine, started your practice within just around the same year as me. Although your entry point was hormones and women's health, as you just shared, and mine was metabolic disturbances, hypertension, high cholesterol, diabetes, but our purpose was the same, in that we wanted to see people's lives changed in a positive way using food and nutrition and seeing the valuable benefit, but both having seen that 20% of our clients were not getting better and we were missing something. And what we were missing, come to find out, was the fact that there are metabolic disturbances that wreck the system. And even just eating and drinking better alone isn't enough. That what are those disturbances and how can you dig into those a little bit more and do discovery on that through testing biometrics and really get people on an individualized lifestyle plan and putting them around experts in the field, not just ourselves, right? Because we can't operate as an island, but using other resources in our community and other wellness providers to come alongside of our patients as well in a team approach to help them feel their best.
Yeah. So in my functional medicine practice in Jackson, Mississippi, I was pretty isolated. I didn't have reps for companies like lab companies, supplement companies, and things like that. I didn't have access to those people unless I physically went to conference. I would have to go to conference, make those connections, and then hope they remembered who I was and perhaps what I needed. I quickly realized that Lori was such a huge asset to me because she did have those connections. She was in Central Florida. A lot of those reps visited her clinic in person, and she was able to say, hey, I have this friend in Mississippi. Can you help her out as well? And so we quickly realized that there was a lot of synergy in the way that we helped each other develop our practices.
Keyword.
Yeah, keyword synergy. I remember distinctly a conversation that Lori and I had relatively early on in our education process where she was really struggling with the concept of bringing hormones into her practice. To that point, she had not tiptoed into the hormone world. It was my bread and butter. I loved it.
Sex hormones.
Right. Yeah. And I started describing back to her and painting her the picture that what she was doing with her patients was already balancing their hormones. She was working on drivers of inflammation. She was working on dysregulated blood sugar. She was working on key drivers of inflammation, which at the end of the day is what balances hormones. Right. And it was like an aha moment That's there where she was like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Then adding hormones is like adding sex hormones is like the cherry on the top. It's not the main course. It's the cherry on the top that really helps people feel and function their best.
So in working together in community, what the joy of that is seeing things and seeing potential that we didn't know that we already had and being willing to integrate and also leveraging our power together for our buying power too, and buying equipment and buying things like that. And so we not only had a passion to treat the people in our local communities, and many of you listening to this have been our clients, which is amazing, and we love you, and you have taught us so much.
Yes.
I mean, you have fed into us in the way we have fed into each other. You've taught us so many valuable things. So we have a continued passion to do that, but we also have a passion to take that experience and open up the world, hopefully, to this knowledge by instilling it in other providers of care who maybe they already are starting their functional medicine practices, or maybe not. They're seeing right now that they're overwhelmed or overworked or not satisfied in traditional medicine, and they're looking for an opportunity to really practice what we call fun medicine,
Right.
functional medicine, and do it in a lucrative way.
Well, one of the things that we recognized, I think, early on in helping other practices in functional medicine was that if you take the same strategies that you had in your conventional practice and apply them to your functional practice, you will burn out.
Absolutely.
No doubt. So in order to really have a practice that can not only sustain the provider and the provider's team, but ultimately the community and the patients, we have to help them, and we have to help each other stay accountable to the self-care and the disciplines within the practice that can create that. And that's really what Synergee is all about, is really pulling our resources together, making sure that we are staying congruent with our message, making sure that we are speaking into each other and into our community in a way that's going to promote, a level of wellness that we could not achieve on our own.
So Synergee came up. I remember it like it was yesterday. We were eating at one of my favorite restaurants in Orlando, Boathouse. We had gone there an afternoon and we're having lunch. And outside, as we were eating, we were drawing on a napkin, actually. And we were thinking about what a logo for this idea that we had at the time, not really knowing the name Synergee, but just knowing that we both had last names that started with E, and kind of what would that look like. And I remember doodling on a napkin, and I remember keeping that napkin for years, because Synergee didn't come alive for several years afterwards. But talks began at that moment and continued throughout over the years, and now fruition. So Synergee is a company that both Kelly and I, co-founders of it, have together. And it's a unique blessing, as you said, using years and years and years of just our experiences in care with our patients, and thanking in a grateful kind of way for those who mentored us.
Yes.
Who mentored us, and giving back, and hopefully turning that into mentoring others, both other patients as well as our business, functional medicine, other providers of care, but just feeding into them encouragement, inspiration, knowledge, education, mind share, just getting together as a group and sharing experiences and cases. But it has been a very unique opportunity, and I'm so thankful for it.
Right there at you.
Yeah. So that's really our stories as we like to share them. I don't know that we got into too many of the things that we don't like to talk about. At one point, you did provoke some tears in me, I will say, because there's, an emotional component. To meeting, but so thankful for what we've been through, what we've shared, and what we're going to get to share in the future. So hats off to you. You're a unique friend, individual, and I'm proud to be in business with you.
Yeah, and I want to say thank you to our listeners. We wouldn't be here without you. You're our inspiration. We have learned, as Lori mentioned earlier, so much wisdom from the way that you have responded, and sometimes the way you haven't responded to therapy. And we just appreciate you for walking beside us and allowing us to walk beside you on your wellness journey.
And we hope that you realize that your story is unique to you, but your story is what makes you you. And sharing your story and living out your story, not with guilt or shame, but an appreciation of that story, is just such a beautiful thing. So we really encourage you to not only thank you for your time, but encourage you to keep listening, because we look forward to future opportunities in which we can share more to inspire you and encourage you. Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. You can find more information about Synergee at Synergee for Life. That's SYNERGEE, 4life.com.
And then Synergee Connect is our Facebook. And then please make sure to follow us on your favorite podcast app so that you make sure you get future notifications of episodes.